This is the presentation of the paper Exposed or Erased, Algorithmic Censorship of Nudity in Art, accepted at CHI 2024 and authored by Piera Riccio, Thomas Hofmann and Nuria Oliver. Social media platforms are extremely important for artists to reach their audience, to the point that these platforms are becoming de facto art galleries. However, in these online environments, there are policies and rules that the users must comply with. In particular, content showing violence and pornography is not allowed. We know that artistic nudity is a subject of historic relevance in the visual arts, yet it is often deleted from social media platforms because it is confused with pornography, creating serious consequences for the contemporary art landscape. Given the massive utilization of artificial intelligence in content moderation, we refer to this phenomenon as algorithmic censorship of artistic nudity. We use the word censorship rather than simply content moderation because in this work we specifically address and investigate the cultural relevance of this phenomenon, highlighting the implied power dynamics between platforms and artists. Before delving into our work, we highlight that artistic nudity is often hard to define and that different scholars have different definitions to distinguish it from pornography. However, in our work, we simplify this distinction by focusing on the fact that pornography is generally defined as a type of content that is created with the precise intention of arousing the consumer. To investigate the phenomenon of algorithmic censorship of artistic nudity, we adopt a qualitative methodology, performing semi-structured interviews with 14 visual artists that work with nudity and have experienced censorship online because of it. In our interviews, we have asked about their artistic practice and experience with online censorship, their perception and understanding of this phenomenon, the financial and artistic impact of algorithmic censorship on their practice, and their ideas for possible solutions. We have interviewed a diverse set of participants which have different careers in the visual arts. For example, our set contained designers, art directors, painters, photographers, a choreographer, and also an art history researcher. After performing the interviews, we have grouped the emerging themes into 5 parent themes that include reflections on this phenomenon, understanding of it, the impact on their lives, their reaction, and possible solutions. The first parent theme that emerged concerns the reflections of the artists on this phenomenon. First and foremost, the participants have highlighted that this type of censorship cannot be compared to any censorship happening in the past because of the difference in scale of the audience that they can or cannot reach through social media platforms. In addition, the participants have highlighted that nudity is different than nakedness. In this regard, we quote participant 06. You get naked when you want to take a bath or a shower, but nudity is put on display. Nudity is what you see in museums or paintings. Nakedness is something more vulgar, an action that is not supposed to be seen. In addition, the participants have highlighted that algorithmic censorship has a lot of biases, and some artists or some subjects are more censored than others. In this regard, we quote participant 11. But with breasts, it is very gendered, and it can have an adverse effect on what people feel like sharing and what people perceive as shameful. In this sense, participant 11 is highlighting the presence of a gender bias, but our participants in general talked about racial bias, gender bias, and even medium bias. In the second parent theme, we consider the understanding of this phenomenon by the participants. The participants have observed that algorithmic censorship of artistic nudity has a lot of technical limitations, probably due to the ambiguous nature of artistic nudity. In particular, participant 13 says, Artists that do sketches or drawings showing explicit images of sex and erections are considered okay just because it is a drawing. Photography instead is not treated as an art. In addition, the participants highlight that social media platforms have economic interests. Participant 8 says, creators for them are the people that make others more addicted to the platforms. Basically, what they want to say is that artists that work with nudity and belong to niches are not protected because they are not economically interesting for the platforms. Many participants also highlighted that they believe there are ideological reasons behind algorithmic censorship of artistic nudity. Participant 3 says, I believe the situation is getting worse and worse, as art is seen as a tool for manipulation. In general, most of the participants highlighted that they lack a proper understanding of this phenomenon. Participant 7 says, I had already read the guidelines and they specifically said that nudity was acceptable as long as it was neither pornographic nor violent. My work does not promote that at all. I felt that I was misunderstood. In the third apparent theme, we consider the impact of algorithmic censorship. First of all, the impact can be individual, considering the psychological consequences and financial consequences on the artists. For example, participant 1 says, social media gives the impression of freedom, but it is very framed. However, it is important to remind that even institutions are impacted by algorithmic censorship, and participant 5 says, it is affecting the decisions of our institutions as well, based on what they can promote online. Very importantly, our participants highlighted that algorithmic censorship also has a big societal impact. For example, participant 9 says, maybe this is just my perception, but I do not see that much nudity as I did in the past. It's nothing new after all. We know we are all manipulated. In the fourth parent theme, we focus on the reactions of the participants to algorithmic censorship. Many participants declared that they have changed the creative practice after having been censored. For example, participant 2 says, I steered away from the nude because in the back of my mind I was afraid of getting censored again. I believe this is the worst effect of it, self-censoring. It's like the media is inside my mind now. In addition, participant 11 also says, there is some area of creativity between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, so the idea is to follow the letter while protesting the spirit. Meaning that some artists have used censorship as a tool to protest against censorship. However, none of the artists believed that censorship can be good for creativity. In general, our participants also declared that they changed their relationships with online platforms. Finally, we consider the possible solutions proposed by the participants. First of all, many have suggested that education and awareness could be tools to improve the situation. Participant 5 says, the art community should stand up for the artists that are suffering and protect them. I would like artists to be more involved in the digital rights conversation and realize that their practice and finances exist online and it's something that all of us can relate to. Many participants also proposed alternatives to mainstream social media platforms, as well as increased transparency regarding the applied rules and the recourse mechanism. In addition, participants have also proposed technical solutions, such as personalizing the social media platforms or creating credentials for artists. From our study, we draw several implications on the artistic dimension of this phenomenon, its technical limitations, and the platform's governance. From an artistic dimension, we highlight that algorithmic censorship of artistic nudity has a huge impact on the artists. This impact is emotional and psychological, but it's also financial. In addition, the artists start self-censoring themselves, and they're basically suffering a form of ex-ante censorship, meaning that some of them cannot even show their art to the public before being censored. In addition, our work contributes to some extent to the discussion between the difference of artistic nudity and pornography. Even though this is outside of the scope of our research, our artists declared feeling misunderstood in the intentions behind their artworks. In general, we conclude that art should be considered as a special case in content moderation, because censoring artistic nudity threatens democracy, cultural production, and also psychological well-being. In addition, education and activism can be seen as tools against manipulation, and the artists in our study have reported feeling lonely in their fight for freedom of artistic expression. The participants of our study did not propose improving the algorithms as a possible solution. However, from their interviews, we have identified two main technical limitations of content moderation algorithms. First of all, a lack of context and literal understanding, which is necessary to appreciate works of art. Decontextualization and literalization are indeed known limitations of algorithmic content moderation, and we suggest focusing on data from different modalities rather than just images. In addition, the participants have mentioned the presence of a lot of biases in content moderation, and we believe that focusing on the literature in algorithmic fairness could be beneficial for content moderation. From a governance perspective, the participants have highlighted that they need more transparency in the decisions of content moderation, and there should be better recourse mechanism so that they could open a debate to defend their art. In addition, we realized that a multi-stakeholder and an interdisciplinary approach would be really beneficial to have a more art-centric perspective on content moderation and actually consider art as something to defend on social media platforms. This was just a quick overview of the most important points of our work exposed or erased algorithmic censorship of nudity in art. We thank you for the attention, and if you have any doubt or question, please feel free to reach out.